myself for, a couple of minutes, right? So my name is Gaurav Singh, and I'm a senior vice president at Polestar. I lead an industry vertical at Polestar, which is of manufacturing, automobile, uh, pharmaceutical, and life sciences, right? So all the accounts which are part of these industries, they fall under me in terms of, the overall accountability. So prior to this role of an industry leader, right, I was working as India sales head for Polestar Solution itself, right. And prior to joining Polestar, I was working with Accenture Strategy and Deloitte, where I worked on a lot of initiatives in terms of analytics and enterprise performance management. So that's a quick introduction about myself. So in today's session, right, I will try to share whatever insights I have about how we can actually bridge the gap between sales strategy, and sales execution, right? A lot of times, what we have seen, is that when we plan for something, right, through the year, sales is one of the primary functions which actually is the place from where the planning starts, right? Revenue is the biggest contributor to any of the organizations, and that's where the bugs eventually stops. So I'm just sharing my screen. Right. So before we start into or dwell into how AI or the digital technologies are changing the landscape of sales, right? I just want to start off with a quick definition of sales, right? So when we usually look at sales, right, we talk about or look at sales from an angle of exchange of goods, right? Primarily, yes, this is what it means, but essentially from a function perspective, right, sales is not only about the exchange of goods or a transaction merely happening, right? It's more about focusing on novelty and innovation which can be brought into the process. One of the one of the greatest I would say things told about salesperson is that they are the most creative people in an organization. And when we talk about creativity or adoption of newer technologies, sales are in the forefront of it, right? So that's where we actually look for how we can embed technology into the sales process. Then sales again is about giving you or your customers the value, right? So the whole transaction which is taking place, the essential means of it is to provide your customer with a certain amount of value for their leads, right? So primarily these are the three ABCs of sales, right? And with this, we actually say that sales is not just for a simple act, but it's a meta act which is much beyond the purview of a transactional thing. And sales is like the engine which actually drives a company forward, right? It's just like the engine of a car that powers the car forward. Sales of sales function of an industry, it is responsible for making sure that the organization moves forwards, right? And you have enough revenue which can actually fund your research and development, marketing, operations, and manufacturing activities, right? And let the company grow. Now, how the sales function has evolved over the years. What we have seen is when we the salesperson function was primarily in the primitive ages, right? We always started with the barter trade, right? So there was primarily a direct contact. Now, when we say direct contact, we principally mean that it was more built on trust and relationship, right? And that became an important part of the sales strategy, right? So if you look at the sales function, as we evolved the sales strategy, it got many elements added to it, right? So primarily, when we started off the journey, it was more about the direct contacts or building up the relationships, like a farmer who had an access of a commodity product, right, like a corn. They used to trade it for something else in return, right? Money was not a concept at that point of time, and it was merely based on the trust that you used to value your goods. From there, right, came the concept of traditional selling. When I say traditional selling, right, it's like the offline selling which is done today. right? You go to a store, you have a need for a product, you look at that product, you look at the quality, features, and utility of that product, and then based on that, you purchase that product, right? Over here, salesperson knowledge was of prime importance, right? And it was the era where a salesperson was essentially supposed to know all the features of the product they were selling. From there, we moved into an era of industrialization and mass production, right? Now, what it did to us was essentially the product remained the same. The number of products which we were selling were more. Now it actually gave rise to systematic sales team. So prior to this, if we look at the barter or traditional sales, it was more about individuals. But from here, actually, uh, it became a function where the strategy was evolving around teams, right? And from when the industrialization era came, the whole point of view was how we can formalize a strategy for the team rather than for a single person. Then came the era of advertising and mass marketing, right? And it actually changed the perception in which the sales was dealing, right? The confinement of the region, right, was no more there. With advertising and mass marketing, the sales force, they started reaching beyond the boundaries of their region. Then came the era of consultative sales or consulting approach, right, in the sales. And this is something which we do a lot as of today as well, especially in the services industry, and in a specialized products where addressing the need and improve loyalty of the customer is very important. So this element of consultative approach, it became the part of our sales strategy, right? And then came the digital era and e-commerce era. Everything went from offline to online. We had the platforms like Amazon and Alibaba, etc., which actually changed the way the sales were done. There was another medium added to the sales strategy. So the sales was not only about the physical structure, but it was also about how we can reach more and more audience on the online platforms. And finally, now we are in the age of data driven and personalized sales, right? Uh, the focus of this era is to accurately predict what my customer requires, and how I can actually predict the behavior of purchase of a customer. And this is the place where actually AI plays now a very important role. When we look at the overall elements of strategy, right, these sales strategy, these elements, they still remain relevant in all the aspects. The only thing is that now with the advent of technology, right, and with the capability of analyzing data, we are able to actually derive more insights out of the data which we have gathered, and we are able to actually help you drive sales strategy elements in each of these areas. Right. So now let's talk about what were the traditional touch points, right, and what an almighty salesperson, right, used to think about his sales approach, right? When we talk about traditional touch points, right, usually the salespeople who are actually able to do all these things, right, they used to be considered as the almighty salesperson. uh, you had your advertisement, print and TV, etc., which was more of a marketing function. But if you have that in your organization, you were supposed to be an organization which is quite advanced in terms of your selling capabilities. The second touch point which we usually have with our clients is sales call or meeting, or gather industry meetups, etc., right, where you will meet the prospective clients and talk to them. The third is more from the physical store perspective, right? You have your retail stores and showrooms, and these touch points, these showrooms, they become the touch point for you and your customer to interact, right? You also have your sales force over there to actually meet and greet and understand the behavior of the clients. Then with the digital era, right, and e-commerce coming in, websites and e-platforms, they also became very relevant, and that is something which is a platform which people analyze to actually understand the behavior of of their customers. Email, again, one of the mediums which is largely used by all the sales personnels, right, in order to reach out to their clients. And then there are websites, or there are feedback loops which have been covered in your entire sales process, where you try to touch base with the customer in terms of the service, or in terms of a short review or a testimonial, based on where that touch point has happened, right? But whenever we talk about it, right, all these touch points, they have to be categorized into certain areas of the sales strategy elements which we talked about, right? So if you look at what an almighty salesperson needs to do, is it's not only about covering up these touch points, but it's also about making sure that he's able to derive value out of it by building up relationships, right? He should understand the whole process of prospecting and lead generation. He should be able to handle the objections which are there in the sales process. He should be able to handle the sales funnel and pipeline, right? And then there is a lot of emphasis in terms of making sure that the salesperson on the ground is trained and coached well, right? And he has the collaterals and presentations which can actually help him pitch the product well to the client. And then last but not the least, right, the performance of the salesperson, right, from his individual perspective and from his team's perspective, is something which needs to be measured. And that's the impeccable and necessary thing which an almighty salesperson should carry. Now, we have spoken about the elements of strategy, right, and we have also spoken about touch points. Now, where do the gap actually happens when we talk about the details sales strategy and execution, right? So the first gap which we usually see is, right, we call it hogging the ball. It's like there will be one salesperson or one touch point, right, which will be giving you the maximum stream of revenue. So for if you are an offline store, right, it is a possibility, or a retail store, right, it is a possibility that your store becomes one touch point which actually is giving you or dominating your sales efforts, right? Now, obviously, this seems to be right when we look at from the sales, from the revenue generation perspective. But there are analysis to be done on top of it, right? You need to actually analyze, is there a concentration of sales lead with a particular salesperson which is actually giving him or the domination over the others? Are there issues in which you are educating your sales force, because of which few of the salespersons are more dominant and they have access to a larger budget or more of the marketing tools, right? Or they may have even the better territory. So all those actions should be looked at to understand why some of the revenue streams are doing better than the others. Second area or gap in the strategy execution is when we derive our sales strategy, we usually don't consider the laborious manual task which needs to be done in the sales process. A lot of times we plan the strategy based on the fact or thinking that it's something which doesn't require too much of an effort, right? But ultimately, when we go down and check with our salespersons, we will realize that 70 to 80% of their time is actually devoted towards doing the operational activities. Now, this is a time which we could have really, saved, and could have, helped, could have helped them in terms of, working on the real value generating activities in the sales process itself. But this is something which is, usually it gets missed out, and then, a lot of sales which we could have made is not happening as of now. Then comes your run of the mill. So there are organizations where things always look same, or it could be, just a little bit better than the last year. There is a consistent underachievement of numbers, which may be happening without any reason, but then you are not able to challenge those numbers because there is no basis with the sales leadership to actually analyze the performance of the individuals. In these situations, what you will see is there will be a lot of reasoning also given by the sales rep on why the strategy has not worked for them, right? And this is a classic case where, people, when they believe that, they will not be able to achieve the numbers, they will come back and say that, yes, I told you that it will not be achieved, and they will give a reasoning to it. But the idea is, with the implementation of AI, we should be able to actually counter intuitively, give them the reasoning of why it would have worked, and you can also give them the evidences of how it is actually working, uh, when we talk, when we look at the data. And then lastly, but not the least, is the oblivion stage, where, there are situations of blackout, right, where you really don't know what you have not seen, or you are not, realizing exist, right? So there could be certain leads, there could be certain customers, there could be certain opportunities which your sales team is constantly missing, but you are not able to track it because there is no visibility on, those leads. And obviously, what we have seen is there has always been some reluctance in terms of switching to modern technologies, because sometimes exposing these technologies to the leadership can also bring in a lot of, information to them, which can makes the life of the sales force also difficult. But with the advent of technology and the, the right implementation of technology, what we have seen in our experience is that it not only helps the leadership teams, which is the usual behavioral understanding of humans, that it only helps the higher ups in terms of making decisions, but it also helps the people who are executing the job. So that's where, we need to really look at these technologies from a very serious angle and try to understand how it can actually help build a better sales function for us. Right. Now, when I look at it, that these are the gaps, right? What organizations do? They get a lot of tools in the name of technology in their organization, right? So there will be a lot of tools like, Salesforce, there will be Zoom Info, there will be, HubSpot, some sales tools, some marketing tools, right? Which can actually help you get some business insights, and it can ease up the way you work, right? With the online medium and with the COVID coming in, right? A lot of things have started moving to online medium. So there are a lot of discussions which are happening on Zoom, Teams. There are informations flowing across in emails, and then there are, data points which are lying in the Excel. So all these tools are there. What it is doing is, we think that we have done the implementation of technology, but it is actually, creating more and more confusion in the mind of the salesperson. And similarly, it is also not giving the adequate result to the customer or the client you are serving. What we need is a simpler solution where, all these tools, they, rather than, being zigzagged and uh, taking information here and there, should be able to help us in one single layer. And that's where, the AI of today comes into play, and the data analytics part of it comes into play, right? Where you can actually analyze the information of all the platforms. And this is just a, representation of this. There could be a number of tools available with you, ERPs and some of the other tools as well. But we also need to look at, what kind of a sales I am making, because there is no one fit solution for all the types of sales, right? And this is just a small example which I want to give you, right? We also have to look at what are those patterns of sales which I can actually automate. So there are certain areas which will be highly applicable for automation. Some of them would be somewhat applicable for automation, and then there are areas which may be less applicable for automation. And organizations needs to understand this when they actually venture into implementation or automation of certain task, right? So if you look at your screen, right, there are four types of sales which we have classified over here, right? So one is your self-service, then there is a transactional, then there is a solution-based and project-based. All of them, they have a different way of selling. Self-service is where the client understands the product well, has a need, and then he kind of had made up his mind and he will kind of buy that thing. So it's a very short buying cycle, right? So a transaction which is taking place in the e-commerce website, right? So for that, you can actually automate many of the touch points. For a transactional sale, right? Probably the example would be like buying a car, where you have a need, you understand the product, but not to a great extent, right? So you know what product you want to buy, but probably you don't understand all the features. So you will go and visit the car showroom probably a couple of times, you will make up your mind and you will buy. So this cycle of buying is still short if you have the adequate amount of budget, but then there would be one or two active buying components, or buying alternatives which you probably would analyze, right? Then comes your solution based sales, right? These are the sales where again the clients have need. uh, there is a solution available, but there is a lot of customization probably needed, right? From what my need is, from that perspective, right? It could be like buying a house probably, where you can buy the shell, right? In many of the projects which are coming right in real estate, what we are seeing now is you have the shell and then you have to do the interiors on your own, right? So these are the solution based approaches which they you can see in that area. And then of course in IT you have a lot of solutions which needs to be customized, configured for the clients, right? So over here the buyer will evaluate 2 3 alternatives, the whole buying cycle will be longer, and then you will make a decision. And then there are project based sales, right, where uh, you have multiple peoples who are involved. A customized solution needs to be thought of for you, and there is a longer sales cycle as well as an implementation cycle, right? So there is no standard product available which can actually fit into your needs. Now, if we look at it, right, from a automation perspective, what you will see is, if I categorize my sales cycle in terms of demand generation, lead management, opportunity management, and account management, for sales service, probably I will be able to automate most of the things, because these are more of a need driven, a tailor made product driven sales, right? So I know what kind of customer or target audience I have. I can actually start automating things from that aspect. Uh, the the customer itself is coming into the transaction, and the lead management process can also be taken care of. Then the whole buying cycle is not that long, so I really need not to track too much in terms of the opportunity management and the account management perspective as well. Loyalties is something which I probably will look at if I'm talking about these sales, and that's where I can automate certain features of that as well. But as we move towards the project based sales, right, these features may not be completely automated as of now, because there are so many tailor made components, right, involved in these sales, where you have to actually bring in the human intelligence, right? So that's where we really need to see what are the use cases or what are the sales opportunities which fit in for AI properly. Now let's talk about we talked about the gap, right? and we also spoke about how technology should be implemented, right, in certain types of sales. But when we talk about bridging the gap in the age of AI and advanced analytics, right, let's look at some of the use cases which can be implemented, right, from the gap perspective. So when we talk about hugging the ball, where we say that it's one or a few reps who are actually driving the revenues, or one stream of touch point which is driving the revenue. These are some of the things which we can analyze, right? Opportunity and account mapping, sales funnel analysis we can do, sales territory and lead assignments we can look at. The idea would be to look at the anomalies which are there. We may have to think of whether the territory quota management has been done properly. Are there channels to collaborate and share knowledge? It is a possibility in such cases where we have seen with some of our clients, and this is a practical thing which we have actually observed when we were working with one of our ITS clients, where when we were analyzing their sales data, we realized that there were certain key reps who were doing really good business, but the reason for that they are doing a really good business was that they were the long timers in the organization, and the knowledge sharing to the new joiners was not happening. So though the performance parameters, they looked a little skewed towards the long timers, but in the end, when we analyze the pattern of the level of knowledge which was actually getting imparted to these sales people, it actually showed us that if give we start enabling these new bees as well, the sales can augment multifold. So that is something we really need to look from. So it's kind of a you know I would say a multi-dimensional analysis which needs to be done in such scenarios, rather than looking at just one touch point of, or one parameter of revenue to estimate the performance. Then comes the drudgery, right? So this is drudgery when we say, right, this is when we actually have to do a lot of manual and laborious tasks. Now, in another clients of ours, what we observed was when a salesperson, right, and this is a e-commerce client we are talking about, when they are actually, and when in these cases, right, these guys were actually driving their sales. They were the guys who were calling the clients, and they were asking them to and they were talking about some of the offers which are there on the website, right? So when they were actually talking about the offers, and when they were actually telling them about the products which were on sale, what we realized was they didn't had the enough information, and most of the times the performance was not coming out. So there was a project which we undertook, where we actually gave them a virtual sales assistant which can actually provide them the information on demand, right? So a voice based assistant who can throw out the details which they have requested on the screen, which helps them in terms of navigating their clients on what needs to be done from an offers and promos perspective. There are many solutions which actually talks about doing automation of data entry as well, which many of the organizations lack today. So a lot of RPA tools, robotic process automation tools, are available in the market, and some of the menial tasks of taking out these things or doing data entries can be automated. And with the advent of chat GPT, what we have seen is many interactions can also be translated into notes, and the summary of those notes can also be taken into consideration. Then comes your run of the mill, right? So when you are talking about some your sales force not performing to the optimum level, or there is a underachievement within the team, one of the things which you need to look at is an intelligent sales forecasting solution, right? Because that is very important for a sales leader, or even for a sales team, to give guidance. So when we talk about these things, right, it's not only giving the guidance to the overall team, but also giving uh, guidance not only to the leaders but also giving the guidance to the overall team. And similarly, right, there are cases where the process was optimized, and based on that, we saw a lot of improvement in terms of how the salespersons were performing. And then we come to Oblivion, right? So over here, pipeline and your deal progress tracking, right? And tracking the customer sentiments, right? It becomes a very big area of analysis. These are the areas which will give you insights about the things which you actually were not even looking at. And doing a bit of a customer sentiment analysis for one of the clients, right? It actually revealed that the feedback of their star product was actually getting into the negatives because of a new competitor launch. Now, if they know this feedback, they can actually, start incorporating the feedback within their sales process as well. Otherwise, what happens is the sales force also, kind of takes a wrong approach to how to interact with their customers. And the overall idea of bridging up all these gaps would be to give you a omni sales and enhance customer experience, right? And automate whatever tasks are there for a Salesforce. A few quick case studies, right? We're talking about intelligence sales forecasting. This was something which we did for a technology selling company. You know, they had they were seeking some solutions around advanced analytics, right, to actually predict their sales forecasting to make uh, their sales rep more responsible. Some of the challenges which they were facing was the forecast was inaccurate by the amount of 15%. There were too many manual data entry points. Then there were limited insights shared by the salespersons, and then insufficient resource allocation. Uh, what we did was we did a data analysis and pattern recognition. So the data of the sales force, field sales force, was collected from various channels, right? A multivariate analysis was done, and based on that, a pattern recognition was done in terms of the sales, and based on that, the sales forecasting was done. It led to a lot of improvements, right? So there was a accurate forecasting, which actually then led to better management of cash from their side. The resource allocation improved, and there were benefits of real-time integration as the data was brought in, and the outcomes, right? Streamlined sales performance, revenue growth, and business augmentation success. Similarly, a similar case was implemented for one of our clients where I spoke about the virtual assistant, right? So it was more of a chatbot which was used, right? A e-commerce company, their sales process, it required letting them understand the product as well as the offers. The implementation needed real time insights for the sales guys. They needed to be guided. Benefits were during the sales call itself, they got the actionable insights. Real time information was shown to them from a client perspective, and the outcome resulted into a lot of time saving in terms of gathering the customer information and qualifying their leads, right? And in the end, I think it actually helped the whole sales team to make faster decisions uh, when they were interacting with the client. So from here, what we'll do is we'll actually get into some of the demos. I'll share my screen and then reshare my screen to show you a couple of demos. So the first demo which I will be showing to you is on the sales forecasting side. I will make it quick because I understand, we are kind of pressed for time as well. So, all right. So This is, a sales forecasting demo, an asset which was built on, some work which we have done for a retail client of ours. It was a retail brand based out of India, right? And they had various stores which they were operating. The core of the problem was that because their product portfolio was, kind of moving very fast, change in the inventory, so the product categorization was not a concern for them, but the location of the store and the performance of the store was one of the biggest concern from them. So they actually looked at their sales forecast from uh, a retail store perspective, right? So if you look at some of these numbers which are coming across, you will see that we have actuals as well as the forecasted numbers, right? So you have the forecasted daily average sales, and then you also have what was the daily average sales for last years, and it will give you in terms of what kind of a growth pattern you will see as you move forward in some of these stores and the organization overall. Uh, the graph below it talks about the actuals and the forecasted performance, and then you have a certain section which talks about which are the rising stores for you in future and which are the sinking stores for you in future, right? Now when I look at it from on the face of it, it looks like a usual forecasting which can be done in a very simplistic time series manner as well. But the idea over here is not to actually look at from one perspective, but what you need to look at is the multivariate perspective when we are talking about forecasting, right? So if you look at some of the elements, right, which actually were considered while evaluating what kind of a sales performance the store will give, you will see that refurbishment of store was considered as one of the criteria, right, which can have a drastic impact in terms of how your store performs. Then there were promos which were launched across the year, right? Retail is one sector where you will see a lot of offers coming in time to time. There will be periods when there will be spikes, right? So what kind of a effect you will have of those promos was also considered while doing the sales forecasting. And then what effect competition have on the forecasting is the other piece which was covered during the sales forecasting bit. And you can actually increase all these factors as much as you want, right? So if for your business there are more relevant factors which needs to be considered, macroeconomic factors to micro organizational factors, right, then you can actually include them as well. The idea would be not to limit yourself only to the sales numbers of of the historical nature, right? I'm just taking one of the factors which needs to be looked at. And if I look at what kind of impact it will have, right, what will you will see is based on the promos which are launched, you can see a spike in the actuals and the forecasted numbers, right? Now it what actually we can see also over the graph over here is based on the categorization of stores, right? So the categorization of store is usually for this particular client was done on the region basis, on the size of the store basis, right? And on the per capita income of that particular region, right? So uh, on that basis you can see there are stores which where you will see based on the promotion historically there was a bit of lag in the average sales as compared to the growth of customers. So there, if you look at this particular stage, you will see that the sales growth was actually double of in terms of the revenue when we compare to the average customer growth, right? So that means that with the promotion, actually the clients have started buying more of the products from the store itself. Similarly, for the competition effect, also we'll see that there are stores which will have impact both positive and negative, right? So there are stores where a competition was launched and the sales dropped drastically, and then there are stores where a competition came in and the sales started increasing. So that needs to be analyzed, right? What is the number of competitors which makes the sale idle for that particular region. From here, what I will also do is, I will give you a quick demo of, one of the other advanced asset which we have and which we have implemented for few of our clients. Now, this is Alexa integration with Power BI, right? So let me share my screen with you once. Right. So basically, see, lot of times when we actually see, the Salesforce, they are actually shy of using any BI or analytical tool. What this application does is it actually helps, clients to get the information without actually going into the application. So this is just a developer console of Alexa, and just to showcase you, how it works is what you need to do is you can, actually give instructions to this in your in your native language, and then it will be able to pick that information. So what I will do is, I will say something. Let me ask this application to open up the Power BI console. Open Power BI.
Hello, I am your Power BI assistant. How can I help you?
Open logistics report. All right. So if you see, right, based on the command which I gave, right, it actually showed me the page where the logistic report is, right, and actually it helps some of the users immensely, right, because Salesforce, which is on move, right, it may not have enough time to actually browse through the application. They need data on the go itself, right, and you can actually ask them what the numbers as well. So what is the budget for Maharashtra? I will also show you, one of the other assets which we have developed, right? It's an advanced asset which actually helps the clients to actually gather the information on Teams itself, right? So many of the organizations which we work with, right, they all are kind of in using Teams, and integration of such a advanced tool uh, the organization messenger actually helps the client immensely, right? So I'm gonna share my screen again just to give you a glimpse of this particular application. Right. I hope my screen is visible to you. Fazan, can you confirm
Yes,
if?
it is.
All right. So this is, a kind of a chatbot which has been developed, right? What you really need to do is, you just need to kind of start interacting with this chatbot. It understands the natural language, right? It's not similar to the other chatbots which you have seen, right? So what you can do is, you can actually ask them questions in the natural language as well. What is the ID of? So let's say that Naveen Joseph is one of our customers, right? And if I want to understand what is the email ID of that Naveen Joseph, because I really don't have the time to actually look into my Outlook directory and find that email ID, right? I can actually type it in over here in the messenger. I'll get that, and then I can actually start doing an interaction with them. It's not only about email ID. You can find any information about the customer which is available, right? So if I click on this, or probably I will it will ask me for a name, and then based on what I type over here, it will throw the information of that customer in terms of all the things, right? So let's say Naveen Joseph is the customer, and I want to know about him more. I can know about him more. But most of the time, these are the things which are available in the other chatbots as well. The most important or most peculiar feature of this particular chatbot is that you can actually understand the engagement and also tell the rep what action they can take, right? So if I click on next best action, I will be able to see, range of things which it talks about, and it can be actually amplified to as many options you want, right? So over here, the bot is asking the rep, what are they interested in, right? So if you're visiting a customer whose name is Naveen Joseph, you would like to know what is the best time to visit based on the historical pattern of how he actually interacts with these executives, right? It gives you a date. This is the date where you can actually get the appointment. So over here it tells you that Monday is the best time when you can actually go ahead and talk to Naveen Joseph. You can similarly also check uh, what could be the point of discussion which you can initiate with Naveen Joseph. So if you go there and ask him what could be the best message I can give him, right? It will tell you what exactly you need to do, right? So it says you talk about single solution to and intensify, right? So these are the advanced level of insights which you can get from the data which is available, and it actually empowers your sales teams to take quick decisions and then actually automate a lot of manual tasks which they were doing. So these were, few of the demos which I thought of, sharing with you guys. It was actually uh, lovely talking to all of you. I hope that I would have shared some insights in terms of how AI and data analytics can actually help the sales teams to derive better results. In case you have any queries, right, you can always reach out to Polestar with regard to any of the solutions which we have implemented or the use cases which we have discussed from a sales analytics and implementation of CI perspective.